Good afternoon. The September the 14th meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust will be in order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. A motion and a second to approve the minutes. Are there comments, questions, corrections? Hearing none. Voting, please. One more on. There we go. We'll get them straight here in a minute. We got the number down right now. The minutes are approved. The next item is the consent docket. The number of items on the consent docket. Are there items that we'd want to speak to individually?
Mr. Chairman, I draw your attention to a correction also issued with your agenda for items 3A3 and 3A4 to add the words authorized engineer to prepare plans and specifications in addition to approving the engineering report as listed in the original agenda posting.
Do we have a motion to add that specific language? A motion and a second to add the words and authorize engineer to prepare plans in one and to authorize engineer plans and specifications. That's in 3A3 and 3A4. Voting, please. Still got one too many on there. Now back to the consent docket itself. Are there comments or questions with regard to the balance of the consent docket as amended? If there are none, voting please. Still got one too many. Never hurts to have a spare though, right? Technology is just wonderful. There we go. We got the right number now. Okay. The next item is item 4, the concurrence docket. Again, there are a number of items on the concurrence docket. Are there items on that docket to be talked about or considered individually? Hearing none, voting please. Did I get a motion? Not really in that big a hurry. Have a motion and a second to approve item 4. Voting, please. And we got it. Item 5, temporary and permanent easements. There's one easement. Have a motion and a second to accept the easement on item 5A, which is a part of the Chisholm Creek Sanitary Sewer Relief Interceptor Project. Comments or questions? Hearing none, voting please. It's approved unanimously. Item 6, one report. A report from the Aquat Customer Utility Bill Receipt and Payment Option.
Mr. Chairman, we wanted to update you just very briefly on how customer payment methods are changing and what the various options are that we're looking at. In the next year, we hope to look at electronic bill presentment enhancements that help broaden the number of customers who might be able to use this. We plan to look at cell phone payment options because that's a growing issue for us. But generally, the trends have been away from the lockbox, the traditional write a check, toward electronic methods for processing a payment, whether it's through your banking system or through our e-check process. We're very excited about the changes, and of course, are concerned about how we best keep up with that while managing expenses for such.
The majority still pay by mail. Is there a difference in the costs to the trust or to the utility department in handling these payments?
Yes, let's talk about that. And Brett, if you would help me, that if a customer pays through an automated check handling process in which we are still mailing those customers a bill at a cost for the bill production plus the cost of postage, the cost to receive that payment, though, is just 8 cents an entity. So that's about $24,000 a month pay, and our cost for processing that payment is 8 cents. The differentially, though, if you paid through what's called the lockbox, the 80,000 customers who pay by sending us a stamped, self-addressed stamped envelope, that process is costing 13 cents per payment. It's still very reasonable. When you use the opportunity to pay with credit cards, that has a slightly higher expense rate to the utility. It has some benefits to the ratepayer, perhaps in terms of incentives from use. Ultimately, though, e-check, we think, is very cost-effective at 15 cents per transaction, which is also including an electronic bill presentment, so that the customer is getting the bill over the web and paying us over the web at a cost of about 15 cents.
The question about the difference between paper versus electronic bills, it's costing about 40 cents more to send out a paper bill than it does to send out an electronic notice. The cost to receive the money is in the range of 5 to 10 times more per transaction to receive them with a credit card than it does to receive them electronically with a cash or check.
Have we considered some kind of incentive schedule to encourage people to use the least expensive method of payment?
The vendors have proposed from time to time that we consider a convenience fee on credit card transactions because they cost so much money, but we haven't gone that route at this time.
It seemed like maybe beyond that we ought to look at methods to encourage people to use the least expensive method, maybe some kind of a split of the savings initially to get people established in the habit. The second question is on these pay site kiosks. Have we provided the customers current information as to the location of those?
Yes, we do that periodically, but we will again.
It seemed like maybe some insert that lists these various options with some idea of what mechanical steps are necessary to achieve payment through these systems might be helpful to encourage people to use the things, make sure they know it's available. We're looking at a whole generation who doesn't, they don't use paper checks, they don't use the bills, they just do it all online. So I think the age and technical achievements of people are going to help us. But I think anything we could do to encourage that would be better.
Thank you.
I'd actually like to see a better breakdown. I'm kind of visual when I look at these kind of things. I'd like to see a breakdown in terms of these categories about what it costs on the front side, what it costs on the back side. You're talking about the mail cost, the versus the online cost, and then how they pay broken down. Because I think what Councilman Ryan suggests about trying to find some way to at least encourage, if not incentivize, people to do it the cheapest way makes sense to us. And also, I think the idea of a convenience fee, if it's costing more money for one person to pay on a credit card than it costs to pay some other way, I think a convenience fee is certainly not out of the question. I mean, if you choose to pay in a way that costs us more money, it seems to me that the other ratepayers that don't use that shouldn't have to subsidize that, and in effect, that's what you're doing. I'd just like to see some more detail on what we might do to change that.
So we'll begin by bringing you back the information in a more visual format that's a little clearer to summarize in a chart. And If you would like, we can begin investigation of what others are doing for convenience fees, how others are tackling locally or regionally the issue.
I'd just like to see it. I mean, it may be that it's negligible enough or that it's not worth pursuing, but if one person pays in a way that costs 50 cents and another person pays in a way it costs a dime, somebody's got to make up that 40 cents.
Do we know what the other private utilities in town do in terms of credit card payment? Do they?
They're charging convenience fees for credit cards primarily. It's about $400,000 a year for credit card payments that we're paying the credit card companies.
Okay. So it would be worth pursuing. I think that's a good point.
I have another unrelated question before we move on from this. There was an item on the council agenda today about the franchise fees paid by the water utility that haven't been for June, I think, that are not shown in the financial statements. Did you notice that? We're doing the year-end analysis of how much money had been received by the city, and the one thing that was still outstanding were a reconciliation of franchise fees paid by the water utility to the city. And I just wondered why we haven't been able to do that. Here it is, September, and when we would do it.
I'm so
I
sorry.
haven't seen that report, but every day there can be 3 to 5 days worth of every day there can be 3 to 5 days worth of cash that's been received that hasn't been separated in. You know, 'cause a person pays their bill, it doesn't pay water or wastewater, which have a franchise fee, or solid waste, which has a franchise fee, compared to the other parts of the bill, like IMSA or whatever, that don't. And so we have that amount of money in cash, you know, that's outstanding. And so maybe that's what, I haven't seen that document.
If you're not familiar with it, I'll find the report after the meeting and give it to you, and you can talk about it.
Thank you. We'll follow up. No, we haven't.
It's not on the
review the report. I'm sorry.
hardly germane to what we were talking about,
That's
but I just thought about it. Okay, back to item 6. Do we have a motion to receive the report?
I move to receive the report.
Have a motion and a second to receive the report on item 6. Voting. Report's received. Next item is item 7, series of items for individual consideration. The first item is item 7A, which concerns the increase in the fees for boating and fishing, and we have a number of people signed up that want to speak on that, and so I think we might hear them before we discuss it ourselves. The first person is Alice Huff. Ms. Huff, if you come to the microphone and state your name and your Oklahoma City address for the record.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Alice Huff, and I live at and own my own home at 2508 Northwest 30th Street, and I'm a registered voter. I'm here to talk about raising the fees for use of, in my particular case, a kayak on city lakes. It was rather a shock to me to find out that I pay a water bill every month to drink the water from these lakes, and then to go out and float on them, I have to pay a second fee. That seemed a little outrageous to me, but I paid it. And then to raise it again to, I think, $33, which is a third of a $100 bill. This also seems a little high to me. It seems like there should be a closer look at the management and the good use of this money. I want good value for every dollar I spend. I'm not here as a senior citizen, although I am one, and I have a limited income, but I love living in Oklahoma City, and I think that the improvements made in this town since, let's say 89 on up, I moved here in 65, have been fantastic. And the opportunities for entertainment and fun and enjoyment here are fantastic. And because of my health problems, I have found out that a kayak is better for me than a treadmill. So I bought a boat, bought the paddles, bought the life jacket, and go out with some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life to go out and float on Lake Hefner or Stinchcomb. I understand Draper is close to us right now, but I'm not sure. I only had since yesterday to prepare. Like I said, I want good value for my dollars. And raising this fee is not a good value for my dollar. The lakes are already paid for by our tax dollars. We pay sales tax for boats and equipment that we buy here locally. We do not even, and I'm talking about kayakers here, and other people have boats and all that use gasoline and oil and fish bait and everything on the water, but I'm talking about an environmentally clean kayak. We should have a safe, clean place to launch. I don't know if any of you have been out to the launch point at Lake Hefner, but after the rains, it is a muddy pig pen. And then the people in their four-wheel drive cars go out there because they love to play in the mud and go out there and make the roads even worse. And I was out there the other night, and there were some people in one of those that were not very savory looking. There was not a policeman in sight, and I did not appreciate having to share my peaceful evening kayak with a group of people that I had my eye on, so to speak. There is no place to launch our kayaks out there. The sailboat point has a nice, beautiful area over there that seems well maintained and mowed and shady, and there's a restroom. We don't have anything over at the kayak lodge point. There is one trash can, which I appreciate, but I can't tell you how many of us kayakers clean up the city lakes. We take trash bags in our kayaks and go out, and I picked up a whole trash bag full of floating vodka bottles, foam cups, pop cans, and everything out of the current of the North Canadian in the Stinchcomb wildlife that goes on into Overholser. As far as I know, and what I've been told, is that people who bicycle, jog, use those big wind kites, do windsurfing, do not pay a fee on their well-maintained trail out there. I've already mentioned the roads. I don't feel safe out there anymore. I used to feel safe anywhere in Oklahoma City I went, but I, as a single woman, if I'm out there or with another woman, we don't feel safe. I never see law enforcement down in that area, and I don't mean to come down and check and see whether we have our permit on our boat. I'm talking coming by and seeing that we're not harassed or threatened, or that we have a peaceful, safe environment to do this in. There's no place convenient to pay the fee. If we have people that come over from another town, Texas, Arkansas, Kansas, Colorado, all over the United States, there's no place convenient to pay even that little $5 daily permit fee. The closest 7-Eleven on Portland doesn't do it. So how is anybody, I had to go to 3 places before I found one that would accept my $5 fee before I had the registration transferred over. And I know this isn't your problem, but it's a hassle to get the title for a kayak that we had bought that didn't have a used kayak that didn't have the title with us. I went to a lake in a small town east of here recently, Seminole. Not a big town, probably has the same problems as every other town in the United States. Their lake had a $5 fee. It was the cleanest, nicest lake, small lake, that I have ever been to. It had clean campgrounds. We paddled the whole lake. There was not one floating can on that lake. A game ranger came by just to meet us and greet us and welcome us to the lake and to say if we needed anything, just let the ranger station know. The ranger station where we paid the fee was well marked. $5. On my Social Security, I can't afford $5. But I can't afford raising $25 to $33. So I appreciate your time and listening to me. I've got kind of an ear problem, and I don't know if you could understand me, but anyway, I want to wish all of you a peaceful day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person that signed up to speak is Dave Lindo.
Hi there. Most of you know me, Dave Lindo, 4700 West Memorial Road. I own the only kayak shop in the state of Oklahoma, and I'm guessing I sell more boats than any boat dealer in the whole state by a long shot. I'm here also on the increase in boat fees with great respect for the hard job that the city manager has in balancing budgets and tough times and this sort of thing. But I think there's a better way to do it. Quick story, I love Mexican food. Used to eat at a Mexican restaurant 2 or 3 times a week religiously, same one. But they started charging for queso that used to be complimentary. Still had good food, it was still a pretty good value, but it kind of didn't seem right to pay for something that ought to be at no charge. Charge whatever for the meal. I haven't gone there since. That was 15 years ago. They probably still have good food. But I feel like we have the same image problem when we tack on fees to use kayaks at the lakes. I hear it every day from customers. We have tens of thousands of paddlers in Oklahoma City and an exponential number in the surrounding communities and surrounding states that would come to Oklahoma City to recreate, to eat, to fill their cars with gas, enjoy lodging, but they don't come. I hear it every day. They say, I'm not coming to Oklahoma City because I have to tag the boat with a city lake permit. And so that's keeping those folks away. And again, the fee increase is a 32% increase. That seems hefty as well. Considering the infrastructure for kayaks is not what it is for a motorboat. You got a pontoon boat, maybe holds 8 or 12 people. They can go out for that same single boat permit fee. But if I as an individual own 2, 3, maybe 4 kayaks, different types of weather conditions, different boats, I got to have a tag on each and every one of them. Or folks that have multiple family members, again, same thing, got to put a tag on each and every one of those. So instead, folks go to Norman. They go to Lake Thunderbird, or they go to some of these places that don't charge these fees. Particularly, the folks we want to get the most coming to Oklahoma City are the outside tax dollars. They're not coming in, and they won't come in because they don't want to have that extra burden. And similarly to what Alice said, are we charging the bicyclists? We tried it about 15 years ago to have a $25 permit for each and every bicycle that would use the dirt trails on city property or the trails around the lake. It didn't sit well with the cyclists. Same story here. If we charged $1 to use the swing sets or a quarter for the daycare kids to come out to the lake, or if you drive by and enjoy the view of the lake, if we're going to charge for each and every one of these things, we're actually not ended up with more revenue in the long run. People just won't come. But appreciate your time and consideration of this item, and appreciate what you do.
Thank you. Next item is Brian Sweeney.
Thank you. Dave hit a lot of the points that I was going to say, too. I wanted to address the fairness of the fee structure.
Brian, would you give it your name and address just for the record?
Brian Sweeney, 4636 Northwest 10th Street.
Thank you.
You, Mr. Chairman, mentioned a moment ago about the people who pay with credit cards that are getting a free ride at the city's expense and possibly charging them the difference in what it costs the city to do that. If I have a ski boat out at Draper Lake that I can take a dozen of my closest friends on, that costs me $25 a year to do that. If I have 4 kayaks to take my wife and 2 kids out to Stinchcombe, that costs me $100 a year to do that. And it seems like there's not any kayak-specific infrastructure out there. We don't need the boat ramps, we don't need the paved parking, and things like that, that a lot of the people with the big, expensive boats have to have. And it seems like there might be a way, I know this is probably not the time to do that, but to think about adjusting it as a percentage of the cost of the boat, perhaps. If somebody's got a $50,000 boat, maybe they could pay a little bit more than I do on my $300 boat. Or perhaps the number of seats in a boat. If you can take your whole family in one boat, maybe you should pay for the 4 seats, like I have to pay for the 4 seats in 4 $300 boats. Like I say, the others have hit most of the points that I do, but I think it's unfair that the people with the inexpensive boats that can least afford the fee increase have to subsidize those people with the very expensive boats that pour gas and oil into the water and pollute the air. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. The last person signed up to speak is Neil Willison.
Good afternoon, Neil Willison, 3612 Northwest 19th, and I'm another kayaker. And I also have a canoe. I don't bring my canoe to Oklahoma City. It's in Stillwater where there's no fee on Boomer Lake. Same kind of issue. The boaters up there were charged. The runners, the walkers were not charged. And they revised that, so nobody's charged on that particular lake. So it's a fair system. I'm just opposed to the increase. I think everybody has spoken very eloquently about why we're concerned. I would just like the commission to hear one more person who would like you to reconsider the increase in boating fees, particularly for non-motorized watercraft. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that wasn't signed up that wants to speak on this issue? Discussion? I have a comment. It is possible that we could, I don't know that we can look at this now as long as we are. I wish some of this had been said a month ago or 2 months ago, but because the decision was made to do this in June. So we're kind of a long ways down the road now to unwind the clock. But I do think that I heard one point that I think is interesting, and that perhaps we could have a separate fee for boats that, for lack of a better way to differentiate them, would be a boat that didn't have a motor. That boats that are not, because there is a difference, I think, in what you can do with them. I hope all of you understand that this fee increase was based on an agreement to keep the fish hatchery open. And so this was a decision that was made because we had a lot of people that felt like the fish hatchery added a great deal to the quality of life at the lakes, and so we decided to keep it open, and this paid half of it, the increases in boat fees and fishing licenses. I don't know how you would, I'm not quite sure I know how you would differentiate between a boat that you fish out of and ones that you don't fish out of, because I guess you could fish out of anything, any boat that floats could be fished out of. But I do think before we renew this or look at this for the next fiscal year, we ought to take a look at some of the things they've raised about whether or not it does make sense to have the same fee for a large boat vis-a-vis a small one, or a boat that has a motor versus one that doesn't, or even a boat that has a sail or a motor versus one that doesn't. But I think we're a little bit late in the process to do anything about it now.
Well, there was some suggestion back in June, we talked about this, about putting the increase, full effect of the increase on those who are fisher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, because I suggested at that time, I didn't really think about kayaks, but I thought about sailboats.
Right.
That, why are you charging a sailboat owner an additional fee to pay for fishing? And there's very little fishing done from sailboats. It's not a calming sort of thing.
Right.
So I think they're
Difficult to cast with that sail up there. You
Yes.
sure wouldn't want to make a mistake.
and then it's just not very classy. I mean,
But I do think that that it's something we could look at maybe in some more depth. Again, this arose as a last-minute way to save the fish hatchery. That's what it's all about. So if it's not about increasing fees on kayaks or anything else. It arose as a last resort to try to save that fish hatchery. And so it may be that over the next year we ought to try to tweak it.
And to the extent that we reduce the income associated with these non-qualified boats, if you will,
And we'd have to have
we'd have to get it someplace else.
Have to get it someplace
And
else.
so the fishing license fees might be increased, or the boating fees on boats that are
But
specifically.
I wonder if we held the fee, say, for example, for a kayak at $25 instead of raising it to $33, that the impact of that, it's my guess that the impact of that would be negligible on the whole process. I just, if there were 1,000 of them licensed, it would only be $3,000 or $8,000.
Rather than singling out kayaks, because I think you're opening a door for other kind of exceptions.
Exactly.
Perhaps we want to look at some kind of a length basis, so that the smaller boats, those have less impact,
Right.
require less facilities for launching and that sort of thing,
Right.
would pay a lesser fee than a bigger boat.
Right. I think the comments about not having a suitable launch area are something that we can deal with. One of the problems that the Water Trust has, and some of you that have been here before understand this, but one of the problems the Water Trust has is the money that we take in for the revenues for water can't be spent for building ramps. That money has to come from another source. It has to come from fees like we're talking about. It has to come from some other water-related source. We cannot use water revenues to increase recreational opportunities at the lake. We have to find another way to do that. So I do think it's something. I see Marcia's making notes while I was talking and while we were talking. So I do think that's something we can take a look at. I'm just, I don't see how we can do anything about it now.
This was presented to the Game and Fish Commission, and they approved these numbers. Did they have a similar discussion in terms of a different kind of cost or fees for different kind of boats?
Wes Gray is here from the Parks Department, who's the lead department on the ordinance. Wes?
The Game and Fish Commission had extensive discussion over 2 or 3 different meetings about the fees, and I don't remember a discussion about singling out kayaks or sailing boats. I don't think they had any specific discussion about that item, but they considered all the different fee options and arrived at what they're recommending to this body.
There are some state constitutional requirements about fees, too, that we probably ought to take another, that would indicate to me that we probably ought to take another look at this. But I noticed a couple of you raise your hands. This isn't school, so but if you've got a comment that's different than what's been said before, you just come to the microphone and make it.
If I may again, real quickly, Dave Lindo again. My concern with the meetings is this was an agenda item on the Game and Fish Commission meetings, and when people called in response to it or spoke at the meeting, myself being one of them, they were told there were no plans to increase boat fees at this time. Neil is one of the gentlemen that was emailed directly by Jeff Murray, who's over lakes and permits, and he was told in an email, which I can provide, I'm sure I've got a copy in my email, that there are no plans to raise fees at this time. This seems like a direct violation of the Open Meetings Act. If it's an agenda item and it's on the agenda to be discussed, to be told that that's not the case. And maybe Wes would like to speak on this, because I know at one of those meetings, I've been at almost every one of them, that I was again told there were no plans to raise boat fees. It was simply fishing permits that were being looked at while it sat as an agenda item to raise boat fees.
I'm not sure Game and Fish can raise boat fees. Can they?
Let me just clarify that this occurred over several meetings of the Game and Fish Commission, and initially, the discussions were only about fishing permits.
Right.
But as the budget process progressed before council, it became apparent that council wished us to consider, the Game and Fish Commission to consider also boating fees. And so when it was discussed and acted on, it was on the agenda.
Okay, any further discussion? Do we have a motion?
Move the item.
Motion and a second to approve the item as it stands. Voting, please. Item's approved. Next item, item 7B, is a resolution approving the testing services for a proposal submitted by Terracon.
Move the item.
Motion and a second to approve item 7B. Discussion? Those in favor? Voting? I'll get the hang of this. The next item, item 7C, is approve a surface use agreement with Cindy Energy to maximize the impact of oil and gas exploration at Lake Atoka.
Move the item.
Motion and a second to approve item 7C. Discussion? Voting, please. The item's approved. Next item is item 7D, and that's to enter into executive session concerning Sardis. Do we need executive session?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we recommend executive session.
Okay.
Move we go to executive session.
A motion and a second to reconvene in executive session. Have to vote individually. Have to vote individually, is that right? Roll call. Oh, okay. Councilman Ryan?
Aye.
Trustee Thompson? Yes. Aye, for me. We will be in executive session and return when the session is finished.